Welcome to this video all about getting your clients ready for making tax digital. I'm John Stokdyk from AccountingWEB, and with me are George Moss from bMotion Accountants and Chris Downing from Sage. Now, in the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to really go into the nuts and bolts of getting the data from your clients and working it through your internal processes to filing with MTD. The basic tech stack and data flow that is going to be needed to cope not just with the next wave of MTD for VAT in April 2022, but the big one coming in April 2023 with making tax digital for income tax. So to get us started, Chris, can you just sort of set the scene? What exactly are the requirements for submitting digital data to HMRC, and what are the tools accountants need to use to achieve this?
So when we consider what MTD for ITSA really means, it's just maintaining a digital record. HMRC just wants you to maintain accounting records in a digital format, not in paper format. So Excel is digital, but it's not ideal because you'll spend an awful lot of time categorizing information. So really at the heart of everything, it needs to be a cloud bookkeeping solution. But by having a bookkeeping solution, you can then bolt on other services in terms of data automation and bank feeds, but also in terms of how you can use other tools to check and review the information. And then also what do you then do with the outputs, which obviously is really powerful as well. So really when it comes to, let's say, what accountants need to consider, it's really about how do they maintain a really nice streamlined approach in capturing information, turning the wheel in terms of producing a P&L report, sharing that with their client for approval, and then also how do they actually streamline that process to take the data in terms of the year-end compliance, which still exists as well.
Okay, Chris, I mean, all the practitioners watching this video will have experience of dealing with HMRC on the VAT submission sides, but with the transition to income tax, the sort of some of the processes are known, but the actual just volume and alterations to what used to be this, or what is the self-assessment annual process going to the quarterly reports, what kind of changes is that going to impose on practices internally?
Well, straight away, rather than doing an annual submission, you'll be performing at least 6 submissions, being 4 quarterly updates, an end of period statement, which is effectively the 5th return to bring all the data together, and then a final declaration, which is effectively the self-assessment, which we actually recognise today. But when we think about not just the additional filing deadlines, it's also the accuracy which you may need to change your approach to, because the quarterly updates are a business update. There's no requirement to be ultimately accurate. So therefore, it's a case of how do you actually inform HMRC with a rough guesstimate in terms of business performance, but then actually rely on the end of period statement, the 5th return, to effectively do what accountants are used to performing in terms of full-on reconciliations, applying prepayments accruals if they feel necessary, and then actually making all those other adjustments. So really, one of the key challenges with the accountant is actually how do they actually perform the minimal amount of effort to actually support the requirements which their clients now have with digital quarterly submissions.
Great, thanks, Chris. So, George, you've heard the sort of nature of the challenge, and I hope that may reflect what you're trying to do at bMotion. But how have you approached that whole paradox, especially maybe the minimal automation to get a satisfactory result for HMRC? Just what does it look like at your firm?
Yeah, so I think when MTD was introduced to VAT, it was really much a test run. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to mirror that with our self-assessments and our income tax. So by having DEXT, which is obviously, your artificial intelligence apps for receipts, and making sure we can get as many people as we can onto a cloud accounting system to raise their sale invoices, to really streamline the processes and making sure that everybody is using these applicants. If they're not even wanting to, we've got the applications available to them there. And all behind the scenes, with DEXT, our clients might not choose to use them from the offset, but they've got the choice, and we'll be using them on their behalf until it becomes mandatory, where we kind of go, right, you've had the chance to use it, and we'll introduce you, we'll hold your hand all through this process. And we have been sort of doing that and setting our clients up for that over the past couple of years.
Okay. So let me just clarify, because you've got experience with the VAT filers, but accountants watching this video will all be saying, well, we've got these people, they're just unable to use technology, they're hopeless, they can't keep their own books. I mean, do you have any clients like that? And what's what is the solution for the sort of sole traders who really are a little, perhaps slightly still outside of the digital realm? If, how will you manage that type of client if you have any of them?
Yeah, we don't actually have many of them, to be fair, but they do come across and they do come along. And what we do is we hold their hand as much as we can. We show them that it's not as scary as it first comes across, and it's all about training and offering the support. And I think by knowing your system inside and out really helps that, because you're able to go, right, this is how you can raise an invoice, or this is how you upload a picture. And it's really sort of breaking that down to kind of, rather than going, right, well, the system does this, 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 and this, stripping it back, right, all we need you to do is this, just take a picture, or all we need you to do is literally enter into this text box. And it's really breaking it down, because you know the system that well, you're able to dummy the jobs down to be able to give them that training and support they need. And it's slowly transitioning across over sort of the previous tax years. When we introduced DEX, our clients were a bit hesitant. They were like, oh, not too sure about this. But then when we showed them, when it came off to sign their accounts or drop the original information off, we showed them how easy it was. And when clients are like missing receipts and we're requesting them, they're like, oh, I don't know how I've missed that one. But if you're staying on top of applications like this, you're able to kind of realize that, hang on a minute, I'm saving my administration time by using these systems. And that's ultimately sort of changing the mindset of them. If we change the mindset by going, right, if we stay on top of the accounts already, daily, weekly, monthly, when it becomes mandatory of doing these quarterly returns, they're already in the right mindset of, oh, I upload my receipts every day, every week, or whatever interval they do. And the key thing is changing the mindset and holding their hand, because technology can be scary. It all is how it's portrayed, but it's really dumbing it down, and that can only be done by knowing your system.
Okay, I mean, some accountants, George, might be a little bit nervous hearing that, because giving them all these data entry tools, linked to cloud accounts, they might worry that it's just going to be garbage in. And, how do you prevent garbage coming out and going to HMRC in the future, which may become inconvenient for you and the taxpayer?
Yeah, so obviously you've got to make sure you have your controls. Training is one of those. Training is making sure that you are giving the client that limited information that they need to understand that job entirely, so they're able to do that to a high quality. We know our clients aren't bookkeepers, they're not accountants. So the information that we're going to ask from them is going to be limited. We're not going to get them to completely do full bank reconciliations and jump through hoops. So stripping that back, kind of having control mechanisms in sort of, for example, in our Sage, we have them set up, they're raising their invoices, and they're able to track sort of the bank receipts that they have by having a control account. So we'll have a client manual account separate to the bank account, and they're able to record their receipts in there and match them to their sale invoices to have a live debtors. Now, what we do is we'll then reconcile that when we come to completing the bookkeeping, and we'll capture any sort of transactions that have maybe not occurred in the bank. So we'll then question whether it's been paid in cash, or maybe it turns out there's a new bank account that we originally don't have. So it's having controls like that are able to then capture situations outside of their input. And by limiting their input, obviously helps you out, because not only now do we not need to input sales, it's been done for us. We know how those sales are reconciled. So we've stripped that sort of problem out. We're then just looking at getting the purchases in. Now, having supporting applications removes the manual work, and it's having it streamlined as much as we can to make that time when it comes to quarterly returns as minimal as possible.
Okay, well, that's ambitious, and I'm going to come back and have to update us in a year's time about how that's going. Thing is, MTD, as I was alluding to Chris earlier, is not just getting the transaction data in and spitting totals out to HMRC. Can you just describe to us, George, what kinds of changes in systems you've had to make internally to cope with not just the increase in volume, but the changing nature of the workload within your practice? How are you going to stay on top of that extra work?
Yeah, so we use a CRM system called Center, and we're able to personalize workflows to meet our needs internally. So we have checklists in place, and those checklists feed into reminders. Those reminders feed into client chasers. So all of this is automatically chased and prompted as and when a client's portfolio is up to a certain stage. So we've removed the actual chasing of the clients, chasing the original information, queries, signatures, because our system does it automatically for us. So we've reduced that administration from a member of the team that can then focus their efforts elsewhere.
Great. Chris, we've just heard quite a sophisticated approach to not just the data processing, but the management of the process. Good marks for George and his approach to it. But are there lessons that you'd pick out of bMotion's experience that you'd pass on to other practitioners about the sort of more macro practice approach to making tax digital?
Yeah, and I think one of my key observations I've seen from bMotion is that they really focused on the problem to hand, and they sat down and documented the processes, and then also didn't really allow too much deviation from the client side in terms of how they should interact with the bMotion process, which ultimately sort of fits into the understanding that at the end of the day, the accountancy firm is like a manufacturing business. You've got inputs, you've got the processing, the preparation of work, and then you've got the outputs. Now, clearly, by having a really great experience in terms of how the client interacts with the accountancy firm, plus also having really good data, opens up the avenues for, let's say, additional services, whether it's business advisory, commercial analysis, management information. But at the end of the day, it's at the heart in terms of that data processing, but also ensuring that actually there's great visibility of the information. So therefore, it's a case of having confidence in the information being presented, whether that's automated or with client input, but also be able to review the quality of that information at any point in time. But also, I think one of the other key observations I've seen from bMotion is the fact that they're using technology more than just in terms of the data processing, but also in terms of the general client experience, because they recognize that with MTD, there's going to be certainly, let's say, more touch points with the client in terms of actually working with them, but also the challenges of actually winning new clients. But also with MTD for ITSA, accounting firms need to review, reprice, re-engage each one of their clients because the services are going to change. So bMotion use services like Go Proposal in terms of client onboarding, raising the right proposals, having sort of active repricing, but also they use other technologies such as Stokdyk to keep on top of the debt collection, because the whole point with any accounting firm is all about ensuring that you've got really good profitability because that enables growth, but also the same point in terms of making sure and maximizing cash flow, all of which are practical aspects which every accounting firm needs to actually get over with and also deliver in a timely manner way before MTD April 23.
Yeah, George, I think a lot of viewers will be quite interested in that. What exactly is your pricing strategy? The nature of the services are changing. Have you adapted significantly to how it will be in the future?
Yeah, so it's quite a controversial, our pricing structure. So we charge on a transactional basis, but we also still have timesheets. And the reason we have timesheets is although we are charging transactionally, we're able to capture any out of scope works that may have occurred, which otherwise would have gone missed if you're charging on a transactional basis. So by having transactional basis charged, which we spent months sort of working out, doing calculations to ensure that what we're saying per transaction isn't going to be completely different to if we would charge on an hourly basis. So it's finding out those averages. And we have a lot of trainee accountants, apprentices. So there is training time within there, which now is no longer passed on to our clients. So there isn't ever that awkward conversation having to sit down and go, oh, hang on, this month's bill's a little bit more because a lot more time's been spent on it because we've had new members of staff join the team. There isn't that awkward conversation anymore. We aren't passing training time on to our clients. It's all within the transactional. We're following our clients when they're in their busy periods. And again, when they're in quieter periods, their bill reflects that. So we're forever following that trend.
So when you say transactional, basically it really is per sales invoice raised or purchase order rather than VAT return filed. It's their transaction volumes you're charging on. Right.
Exactly that. And then, you're not falling back having to have, like I mentioned, those awkward conversations of clients going, oh, well, hang on a minute. Nothing's really changed from last month. Why is my bill this much? Or why is it different to previous months? Because it all falls back on, well, you've been busier this month, you've got more purchase invoices, you've got more transactions, and hence why that's reflected in our fees.
Great. Okay. Well, and that's working so far, so good.
It is, yeah, because at the end of the day, the client is then expecting what their bill can be because they know, oh, I've been busy this quarter. It's going to be reflected in the number of transactions. So they can already sort of calculate roughly a guide price.
Well, George, you've got a very fresh approach to your background there, and it's a fresh approach to your whole sort of practice pricing and processing model. That's all for now. I think the practical ideas that have just come through this short conversation with George and BMotion is really quite impressive, but even in a 15-minute video or so, it can be hard to digest. Chris, can I come back to you? Can you sort of draw things together from your perspective on what someone viewing this video should do going forward? The first or the one thing they've seen and heard today that you'd recommend they go on and do?
I think one of the key things is accountants are best placed to advocate the right processes, and therefore they can share their insights and their awareness with their clients. But when it comes to an accountancy firm, it's all about actually breaking down the various processes of interacting with the client, everything from onboarding them, first meeting them, the proposal, to the actual outputs of preparing the set of accounts. At every stage, time can be saved, because that's one of the key things which MTD is really going to eat into. It's the time available. So capacity creation is key. But also one of the key learnings which George keeps talking about is that training aspect. So whether it's the training of how to use the software internally, but also training and actually creating a sense of, let's say, self-service with the client. Because once they're aware of what you can do with the tools, clients who really grasp the opportunity, really want to get into the skin of how they can use their technology to improve their own businesses, will be in a greater position to adopt the technology and do more of the work themselves. And this is where one of the key themes of MTD is it's got to be collaboration. Some clients will do more, some clients will do nothing, but in the middle, the accountant is the best place to actually advocate the correct tools, the right time for those clients who really need them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And George, have you got any final quick words for viewers who to pass on about how to follow your example if they want to emulate it?
Yeah, I think the main thing is making sure you know your softwares, know what gaps you have between those softwares and how you can bridge those gaps in preparation for 2023, because now's the time to start reviewing your processes in preparation for those. If your processes at the minute are a bit poor, or you already have gaps in them, you've got this time now to kind of bridge those gaps and get ready for the change.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, both. That's been really helpful and really practical, like all the other videos in this Sage-sponsored Get Your Clients Ready for MTD series. Watch for them on our AccountingWEB.co.uk YouTube channel. Some of them will be available, hopefully, from Sage and on social media. And also, if you go visit sage.com, there is a wealth of information there all about MTD and downloads and white papers to help guide these changes that you're going to need to implement. And as always, AccountingWEB is here for any and all of your Making Tax Digital information needs. Thanks again, and make sure to see our other Getting Ready for VA MTD videos. Thanks and bye.